Viewer discretion is advised. In the United States, the illegal drug trade is estimated to be a $100 billion a year industry. From the drug dealers, to the drug addicts, to law enforcement officials who try to put a stop to it, we take you inside the American drug game. Providence, Rhode Island is this nice little New England city. When people think of Providence, Rhode Island, they don't think of drugs or drug dealers. They are probably thinking of this small little New England town. But every one of these picture-perfect cities have a dark side connected to illegal narcotics. Providence is one of my cities that always generates cash no matter what time of year it is. It can be in the middle of the winter with snow on the ground, or it can be hot as hell in the middle of the summer and orders are still coming through. I'll see orders of weed and cocaine, but in Providence, my biggest demand is pills. I mean, I'm talking about every type of pill you can think of. And just like every other one of my cities, I have a certain type of clientele. I'm not selling to some tweaked out dude living under a bridge and in some cardboard box. My customer base is in a higher tax bracket. My customers are those in the high-end category. These people sometimes don't even leave their nice, expensive houses to buy my product. These people, they want it hand-delivered, and they never have a problem paying for it. They'll pay for whatever it is they need, and they'll even add a tip if it's delivered in a timely manner. And these people tip well. They have no problem throwing around money. A large part of my clientele in Providence is not who you would think it would be. Not the type of people you would think would be buying drugs off of a drug dealer. They are your typical average American looking housewife or soccer mom. These are not the type of people you would ever suspect would be buying illegal narcotics off of me. I have one of my biggest clients in Providence who buys off of me, or one of the people that I have based in Providence all the time. It got to the point where she was buying so much product off of me, I actually thought she had gotten caught by the police and was working for them. I confronted her about it, and she explained to me that she was actually taking orders from all of her close friends. She would have like these make-believe parties where they would make it seem like she was selling them like plasticware or perfume or something. But what she was actually doing was selling and taking orders for drugs. These women were buying weed, cocaine, and a lot of pills. She asked me to come to one of these parties once so she could prove to me what she was doing. I go to this woman's house one night, and she has all of her rich housewife friends there at this party. These women, they looked like your average American upper-class housewives, but they were buying drugs off of me. It was kind of crazy because it looked like I had just walked into a school PTA meeting. But these women, they weren't there for some type of school function for their kids. They were there to buy drugs. It just goes to show that the American drug game is a very big and diverse market.
I worked on a statewide task force in Rhode Island that focused on going after drug traffickers. We were getting information from our sources out on the street that there was a large amount of illegal narcotics, specifically pills, that were starting to flood the Providence area. We were being given information that all different types of pills were coming into the area from outside of Rhode Island. We had made several arrests in several different undercover operations, and a lot of these drug dealers had large quantities of pills on them. And I'm not talking about a few hundred pills, I'm talking about bags of thousands of pills. It was like these guys were just running their own pharmacy. As we continued to follow the trail to try to find a large supplier to the area, we continued making arrests during these sting operations. The goal in these operations is always to make the arrest and then try to flip these people to try to find the person who's higher up on the food chain to find a bigger supplier. In the beginning, we were arresting your typical drug addict who would work for us and do some undercover buys for us. But then as we continued the operation, we started to see that the types of drug addicts and drug suppliers were beginning to change. It wasn't the typical addict or supplier that we were used to dealing with. We started arresting soccer moms in minivans, and it was at that point we realized that we had a major pill epidemic in the Providence area. It wasn't just your typical drug addicts who were buying these pills. It was people that you would least suspect. We had a situation where we arrested a woman who was a teacher at a local high school. We were able to get her to flip, and from that we were able to make contact with and set up an operation to arrest her supplier. Her supplier was a female who had a network of people that she supplied to. And these people in her network, these people were teachers and housewives and soccer moms. We tried to get her to flip, but this woman, her husband was a well-known and successful businessman in the Providence area. And sometimes the way it works is that money will sometimes buy your freedom. Her husband was able to hire some big expensive law firm to handle her case, and so the woman never decided to flip, never decided to work with us. At one point during the investigation, we actually suspected that her husband was working with her in this pill distribution operation. However, we could never gather enough evidence to prove that the husband was involved. I think that some of these people who live in these well-to-do neighborhoods think that because they don't live in the poor neighborhoods, the police are not watching. But the police are always going to follow the trail of money and drugs. And if that trail leads through these high-end, expensive neighborhoods, that's where they're going to go looking. I had gotten into a pretty bad car accident, and I needed to have surgery on my back. When I got out of the hospital, my doctor had put me on these very strong painkillers. It wasn't too long after that I became addicted to these painkillers. I continued getting these pain pills from my doctor until one day he told me he wasn't going to give me a prescription anymore for them. But at that point it was too late. I was seriously addicted to these pain pills. I wasn't going to let my doctor stop me from getting the pills that I needed. And that's when I started buying pills from drug dealers on the street. I did that for a little while, and everything seemed to be working out. I was getting the pills that I needed. But then I ended up buying pills from an undercover police officer, and I was arrested. I think that getting arrested when I did actually saved my life. I think that my addiction would have just gotten worse and worse until I just killed myself. I went to court for my arrest, and the judge put me in this drug rehab program for first-time offenders. I was able to get my life back together after I completed the drug rehab program. Once I completed it, the charges were dropped. People think that because you get pills from your doctor, it's not as dangerous as the pills you can buy on the street. I guess people think that a doctor and a drug dealer are two completely different things, and in some cases they are, but in some cases they're not. Because these drugs you get from your doctor can kill you just as quickly as any drug you can buy on the street from a drug dealer.
So I'm at this party, and I'm just taking orders. And then the woman who invited me to this party, she tells me that her husband had just pulled into the driveway. I didn't know what the hell he was going to say when he walked in, so I just looked at her. She looks at me and she just says, "Play along." So the husband walks in, and she tells her husband that I'm some guy selling plasticware and that I'm there giving them a pitch so they can buy my product. And he completely bought it. And then he just walks upstairs. He just looked like he didn't even care. But, I mean, he had probably just come from banging his secretary, so he didn't care what his wife was up to. He just walked away and went upstairs. So I ended up selling everybody what they needed, and then I left. I did think that was a little strange, and it was actually kind of risky to be around that many people. I'd much rather prefer just dealing with that one woman. So that was the last time I'd ever done that. I just continued to have that woman place the orders for her friends. Some of these women are probably married to cops and politicians for all I know. You have to keep it low key to survive in this drug game. Because all it takes is for one of these people to get caught and then to flip on you and start working with the police. And when people start talking to the police, that's when things start to get ugly.